For 37 years, I believed I knew how to communicate. I was a marketing executive, gave conferences, negotiated million-dollar contracts. My words moved people, changed opinions, closed deals. Or so I thought. Until that March afternoon when my 8-year-old daughter looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Dad, you never really listened to me." Those 5 words shattered the empire of noise I had built. I realized I had spent decades talking, convincing, arguing, but I had never learned the ancient art of listening with an open heart. What happened next transformed not only my relationship with my family, but my entire understanding of what it means to be human. This is the story of how silence taught me more than 1,000 speeches, and how I learned that listening is the most revolutionary act in a world that never stops screaming. Chapter 1. The Inner Noise. The midlife crisis hit me in the form of insomnia and anxiety. As I lay awake in the dark, I realized something terrifying. My mind never stopped talking. Even when others spoke, I was merely waiting for my turn, preparing replies, defenses, arguments. The effective communication I was so proud of was nothing more than a monologue disguised as dialogue. I had perfected body language to appear interested, nodding at the right moments, but my mindfulness was always elsewhere. My wife, Anna, had tried for years. "You don't hear me," she would say, and I replied, "Of course I hear you, you just said that." I repeated her words like a parrot, believing that was listening. I didn't understand that true listening goes beyond words. It requires conscious presence and genuine empathy. One night, after another absurd argument about something I can't even remember, I made a decision. I looked for help, not in conventional therapy, but in something deeper. A friend told me about a Zen master who taught mindfulness and meditation in the mountains. He said, "He teaches the art of deep listening." It sounded like cheap mysticism, but I was desperate. I booked a week at his retreat. I didn't know that week would become the beginning of a journey that would last years. Chapter 2. The Master of Silence. Master Takashi lived in a small wooden cabin in the middle of the forest. He was 73, but his gaze had a clarity I had lost decades ago. I arrived with my ego intact, expecting some quick personal coaching technique I could apply to my life like installing an app. I explained my problem in great detail for 15 minutes. He said nothing. He simply observed me with a soft smile. When I finished, I waited for his wisdom, his emotional intelligence advice. Instead, he asked, "Are you done speaking?" "Yes," I replied, confused. "Good. Now listen to the forest for an hour. Then we'll talk." I felt cheated. Had I driven 4 hours to listen to trees? But I obeyed. I sat on a log and closed my eyes, practicing conscious breathing I had once read about in a self-help book. At first, all I heard was my own mind. My to-do list, my worries, my judgments about this ridiculous experience. But gradually, very gradually, other sounds began to filter in. The wind through the leaves, a distant bird, the murmur of a nearby stream. After an hour, I returned to Takashi. He asked what I had heard. I described the sounds of the forest. "No," he said gently. "I wonder what you heard inside yourself when you stopped trying to force silence." That question disarmed me. The truth was, I had heard fear. Fear of silence. Fear of being with myself. Fear of not being enough unless I was constantly proving my worth with words. Chapter 3. The First Lesson. In the days that followed, Takashi taught me something radical. Active listening does not begin with the ears, but with the willingness to temporarily die as the protagonist of the conversation. Every time someone speaks, he explained while preparing green tea, you have 2 choices: listen to understand or listen to respond. Most choose the second. That is the root of all human conflict. He taught me the technique of reflective listening. When someone speaks, your only task is to understand their inner world, without comparing it to yours, without judging, without fixing. Just understanding. We practiced for hours. He would tell me stories from his life, and I had to resist the urge to relate them to mine, to give advice, to interrupt. Just listen. When I believed I understood, I paraphrased what he said in my own words, and he corrected me until I grasped not only the message but the emotion behind it. Words are like the visible part of an iceberg, he said. Real interpersonal communication happens in the invisible ocean beneath the surface. Feelings, fears, unspoken needs. He spoke about compassion as the ability to listen to another's suffering without trying to escape the discomfort it brings us. When someone suffers and you try to fix it quickly, it's not for them. It's because you can't tolerate their pain. Those words hit me hard. How many times had I told Anna, "Don't worry," or "It's not that bad"? Not to comfort her, but to silence my own anxiety in the face of her sadness. Chapter 4. The Return to Noise. I returned home transformed, or so I thought. I implemented everything I had learned with evangelical enthusiasm. But daily life is not a Zen retreat. The chaos of the real world tested every lesson. The first challenge came at the office. During a leadership meeting, a colleague harshly criticized my project. My instinct was to defend myself, to counterattack. Instead, I breathed deeply and applied the emotional regulation I had practiced. "Help me understand your perspective," I said, looking him in the eyes. Not with sarcasm, but with genuine curiosity. For the first time in years, I listened to criticism without defensive shields. And I discovered he was right about several things. My project had flaws I had been too self-absorbed to see. Conflict resolution required no argument, only mutual understanding. At home, things were harder. Anna was skeptical. "This will last 2 weeks," she predicted. She had reasons to doubt. I had changed before, but I persisted. Every night, I practiced empathetic listening with my family. I put away my phone, turned off the TV, and gave them my full conscious presence during dinner. The first weeks were uncomfortable. I realized how much I had missed. My daughter told me about her friends, and I didn't know their names. My son talked about his favorite video game, and I had no idea what it was about. I had been physically present but emotionally absent for years. Chapter 5. The Crisis of Practice. 3 months later came the ultimate test. Anna's mother was diagnosed with cancer. For weeks, my wife collapsed into a pain I couldn't fix, into a fear I couldn't dissolve with logic. The old me would have sought solutions. Better doctors, alternative treatments, optimistic statistics, anything to avoid sitting with her in her pain. But I remembered Takashi's words, "Sometimes the greatest gift is your silent presence beside another's suffering." So I simply held her. When she cried, I didn't say, "Everything will be okay." I just stayed, breathing with her, validating each emotion. "I know you're scared. I am too." Compassionate listening offers no easy answers. It offers companionship in uncertainty. And Anna felt it. "Thank you for not trying to fix it," she told me one night. "I just needed you here." That crisis brought us closer than 10 years of couples therapy. Because I finally understood that love isn't rescuing someone from their difficult emotions. It's being present as they go through them. During this time, I also discovered the power of therapeutic listening beyond my family. Friends I barely knew began confiding deep things to me. Not because I said anything wise, but because I created a safe space for vulnerability, free from judgment. I became a container for others' stories. And in the process, my own story became less central, less heavy. Chapter 6. Listening to the Unspoken. Takashi had warned me, "True mastery is listening to what is not said out loud." Took me years to understand. Nonverbal communication is more honest than words. Awkward silences, evasive gazes, contradictory body movements. Everything communicates truths the mouth hides. I learned to notice when my daughter said, "I'm fine," but her shoulders were tense. When my wife said, "It doesn't matter," but her voice cracked. When my son said yes, but avoided eye contact. Social perception requires more than hearing. It requires full observation, sharp intuition, and the humility to admit you don't know what someone feels until you ask with genuine interest. I implemented a simple practice at home: agenda-free emotional check-ins. Each week, I sat with each family member and asked, "How are you really?" And then I waited, without rushing, without filling silence with my stories, without judging. It was awkward at first. My kids suspected it was a trick to catch them doing something wrong. But with consistency, they learned my question was genuine, that the space I created was safe, and they opened up. My son confessed he was being bullied at school but was afraid to say so because men have to be strong. My daughter admitted she felt pressured by me regarding her grades. Anna told me about dreams she had buried when we married. Each revelation happened because I stopped filling the space with my noise and allowed their truth to emerge naturally. Chapter 7. The Master Appears Again. 2 years after my first retreat, I returned to visit Takashi. I wanted to tell him about my progress, how I had transformed my relationships through active listening and mindfulness. He welcomed me with the same serene smile. He prepared tea, and this time I noticed something. He listened differently from anyone else, not just with his ears but with his whole being. I felt completely seen, completely understood without judgment. When I finished my long story, I waited for his validation. Instead, he asked, "And have you listened to yourself?" The question startled me. "What do you mean?" "You've learned to listen to others. Now you must learn self-compassion. To listen to your own inner voice with the same kindness you offer others." He explained that many of us develop the art of listening externally while remaining cruel internal critics. True mental health requires applying inward the same skills we use outward. He taught me the practice of inner listening, sitting every morning in guided meditation and simply asking my body, my heart, my mind, "What do you need today? What are you feeling? What truth are you refusing to admit?" And then listening without censoring, without judging, without forcing positivity, allowing sadness, frustration, fatigue, joy, and everything I had silenced with my constant activity to emerge. "You cannot give others what you do not give yourself," Takashi said. Authentic communication begins with honesty toward yourself. Chapter 8. The Art of Living While Listening. Today, 5 years after that afternoon when my daughter said, "You never listen," I live radically differently. I've learned that deep listening is a revolutionary act in a culture addicted to distraction. That genuine human connection is impossible without total presence. That the emotional well-being of a family, a company, a society, depends on how many of its members know how to create safe listening spaces. My work changed. Now I train leaders in communication skills and emotional intelligence. But my approach is unique. I don't teach them to speak better. I teach them to be silent with purpose, to listen with sacred curiosity. I've seen how reflective listening saves marriages on the verge of divorce, how empathy transforms toxic teams into collaborative communities, how the simple practice of being present for someone can heal more than 1,000 pieces of advice. My daughter is 13 now. The other day she said, "Dad, thanks for always listening to me." She doesn't know how much those words mean. They mean I broke the cycle, that she won't inherit the emotional deafness I inherited. Takashi passed away last year. At his funeral, dozens of people shared stories of how he had changed their lives. But none mentioned any particularly profound thing he said. All spoke of how he made them feel. Completely heard, completely seen, completely valued. That is his legacy to me. To understand that the art of knowing how to listen is not a technique but a way of loving. That every time I give someone my full attention, I am saying, "Your existence matters. Your story is sacred. You are not alone." In a world that constantly screams, listening is subversive. It says, "Your voice deserves space." It creates islands of inner peace in oceans of noise. It reminds us of our shared humanity. And I've discovered something paradoxical. The less I speak, the more people listen to me. The less I fill the space with my ego, the deeper my relationships become. The quieter I am externally, the clearer I hear my own inner voice. Takashi was right. Listening is not passive. It is the most active, conscious, loving act we can offer. It is the bridge that connects isolated souls. It is the remedy for the epidemic of loneliness of our time. And it all begins with a simple choice we make 100 times a day. When someone speaks, do I really listen? Or am I just waiting for my turn? The answer to that question determines the quality of our entire life. I write this story not as someone who has mastered the art, but as an eternal student. I still catch myself planning responses while others speak. I still find myself checking my phone when I should be present. The difference now is that I notice, and every time I notice my distraction, I simply return. I breathe consciously, anchor myself in the present moment, and offer once again the most precious gift I possess, my full attention, because in the end, listening is loving, and loving is the only thing that truly matters. Next time someone speaks to you, try this. Silence your mind completely. Forget your answer. Look at that person as if they were the only one in the world. Listen not only to their words, but to their heart. And watch how the space between you fills with something sacred. That something is human connection in its purest form. That something is what we're all desperately searching for. That something has always been here, waiting in the silence.